First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Good afternoon. I have with me in the studio today Dr. Stephen Phillips, author of the new book Silver Lining, which is an investigation into UFOs. Now, Dr. Phillips, can you tell us a little about your book?
Yes, certainly. Over the last 12 years, I've become increasingly interested in the subject of UFOs, and this book is a compilation of all the sightings that I've heard about, together with evidence. You see, so many people are convinced that there is life on other planets that I thought I would do some research myself.
And what did you find? Are we alone in the universe?
You sound sceptical. Well, you'll have to buy the book to find out my personal conclusion, but I can tell you this. There are a lot of sightings in a number of different countries, and the surprising fact that I have found is that despite never having met each other, a great number of these witnesses describe an almost identical object. Now, I realize that television and the media has given us all a mental picture of a UFO, a silver ship with bright lights that moves at very high speed. What interested me was that in all the eyewitness accounts I heard, people gave very precise and detailed descriptions that varied only slightly. Reports from America, Europe, even Asia, all share a significant number of similarities.
Interesting. Tell me, have you been able to see any evidence yourself?
Well, no. My aim in writing this book was not really to present my own opinion, but to gather all the information available and collate it into a kind of reference guide. Personally, I don't have anything much to add apart from the conclusions that I've drawn from the accounts I've heard.
I understand that there is a strong body of opinion that claims there is hard evidence that is being suppressed by the American government. Could you comment on that?
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Personally, I don't have anything much to add apart from the conclusions that I've drawn from the accounts I've heard.
I understand that there is a strong body of opinion that claims there is hard evidence that is being suppressed by the American government. Could you comment on that?
The second chapter of my book actually talks about a place in America that has often been in the media, Area 51.
Area 51?
Yes, it's a military base in New Mexico. In 1947, a man called McBrazel claimed...
Sorry, who?
McBrazel. That's M-A-C, capital B-R-A-Z-E-L. Anyway, McBrazel claimed to have found pieces of an alien spacecraft on his farm in Roswell. Now, many people believe that this was true and that the government of the time took the debris. Since that time, they have denied all knowledge of any such find, and accounts by the many leading experts at the time dismissed the claim, believing that McBrazel had actually found pieces of a higher altitude weather balloon that had disintegrated. Now, the lack of information combined with the large number of conspiracy theorists means that no useful scientific conclusion can be drawn, but I have found out one or two surprising details. Again, you'll have to buy the book if you want to find out more.
Okay. Now, I understand that an overwhelming majority of UFO sightings occurred in America. Do you find that in any way relevant?
Well, as I mentioned before, there are a large number of conspiracy theorists, and the popularity of science fiction programs in America could lead you to suspect that these sightings may be nothing more than an overactive imagination. However, I have found that there are a number of other factors that determine UFO sightings. In Northern Europe, the number of reports is very low, whereas in Southern Europe, where there is more open space, less light pollution, and generally clearer skies, the number of sightings increases. Now, when you consider the vast open areas of America, particularly around New Mexico, there is an argument that UFOs are simply easier to see in certain geographical and climatic situations.
Well, I've never thought of that. If I could ask you one final question, Dr. Phillips, what about alien abduction?
Well, I don't really cover that in my book. You see, I was looking to present facts from which people could draw their own conclusions. With these reported abductions, I've found them to be very unreliable.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Before we finish, I'd just like to add that Silver Lining is available at all leading bookstores, priced at £19.99. Until next week, goodbye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a conversation between a prospective student and a university advisor about applying to enter the university.
First, look at questions 11 to 13. As you listen to the first part of the interview, answer questions 11 to 13.
I'm interested in entering your business administration program, and I'd like some information on how to apply. I'm a little concerned because I've been out of school for a number of years.
That could actually work to your advantage. It's possible to get academic credit for work experience if that experience is related to courses in our program.
I've been working in business for several years. How would I get academic credit for that?
First, you'll need to read the university catalogue to see if any of the course descriptions match your specific job experience. For example, if you've worked in accounting, you may be able to get credit for an accounting course.
So then what would I do?
You would write a summary of your work experience, relating it to specific courses we offer. Submit that to the admissions office with a letter from your work supervisor confirming your experience.
Now look at questions 14 to 20. As the interview continues,
Would I submit those things at the same time that I apply for admission?
That would be the best idea. Have you seen a copy of our university catalogue?
Not the most recent one. I have a copy from last year.
You'll need to look at the latest one. Unfortunately, I've run out of copies, but you can get one from the library for now, and I'll send you your own copy as soon as I have more available.
Thank you. How does the admissions process work?
Well, first you'll need to get an application for admission. Those are available in the admissions office. The application form contains all the instructions you'll need.
That sounds simple enough.
Of course, you'll need to make sure you meet all the admissions requirements.
How can I know what those are?
We have copies of the requirements lists for all university programs here in the counselling centre. I'll give you one before you leave today.
Will I need to get recommendations from my employer or former teachers?
Oh, yes, you will. The recommendation forms are available in the admissions office. Now, I don't know if you'll also be applying for a part-time job through the university work-study program.
I'm considering that. How can I find out what kinds of jobs are offered?
You can access the job listings from the computers in the library. Are you planning to study full-time or part-time?
I want to be a full-time student.
Good. Then you'll qualify for the work-study program. Part-time students aren't eligible.
As a full-time student, would I be eligible for a free bus pass?
No, unfortunately, we don't have those available for any of our students. However, you can apply for financial assistance to help pay for your books or for your tuition.
I'd like to look into that. Do I apply for that at the admissions office?
No, that's through us. You'll need to make an appointment with a counsellor.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3. You are going to listen to a radio program about buying a house. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25. Good afternoon, listeners. Today, I'd like to welcome Edward Fox, who is going to talk to us today about buying a house. Edward.
Thank you, Eunice. For most people, at least, buying a house is a major life event, and probably the single most expensive item you are ever likely to buy. It is also a place that you can make your home. Therefore, thinking carefully before you make a purchase is of the utmost importance. One of the most important things to consider before buying any property is the location. Because remember, it is where you plan to spend a large part of your life, or indeed the rest of your life in some circumstances. Therefore, consider the type of life you enjoy leading. Are you a very sociable person who enjoys nightclubs and discos? If so, then you may wish to consider something close to the city, or indeed in a city where it is convenient for all types of nightlife. On the other hand, if, like me, you prefer a quieter life, then you may want to consider something away from the city. However, do remember that proximity to your place of work is also important. Indeed, we spend most of our life at work, and you don't want to have to spend 2 or more hours every day travelling to work now, do you? Therefore, transport is the utmost importance. City suburbs, however, are often conveniently located for commuting to work,
all for shopping,
without being in the heart of a busy city. You may, however, think that a house in the suburbs would be far too expensive. Yet houses located in cities can often exceed the price of suburban houses. So check out the prices. You may be surprised. Family is another important consideration. You may prefer a house that is away from a busy street or main road. And of course, remember that children have to attend school. Is there a good school in the area, or would your children have to travel a long distance to get to school? Therefore, if you have children, or you plan to have children, location is a very important factor. And of course, remember that a family influences the size of the property.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30.
Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
And of course, remember that a family influences the size of the property. There are, of course, various types of houses. There are detached houses which stand alone and are not joined by to another building. Then there are semi-detached houses, which, incidentally, are the most common, and for good reason, because they are less expensive than detached houses. This is because they are, in fact, two houses joined together, and therefore take up less space. And finally, there are townhouses, which are many houses joined together to form a long row. But don't think that townhouses are less expensive than semi-detached houses. They rarely are. This is because they are usually built in cities where the prices of property is very expensive indeed. The age of property is another consideration. If you're considering buying an old house, beware. You may be faced with expensive repairs and renovation bills. So have the house thoroughly checked by a professional surveyor before you decide to buy. But then again, there are things you can look for yourself. Things such as the condition of the woodwork, especially doors and windows that can be expensive to replace. More importantly, make sure all the fixtures and fittings, things such as cupboards, sinks, taps, bathtubs, are all in good working order, because replacing kitchens and bathrooms can be a very costly business. And don't forget the garden. If the property has one, if you enjoy gardening, then fine. But if you don't enjoy gardening, then you may prefer a small garden as opposed to a big one. But even if you do enjoy gardening, it is important to remember that gardens take up a lot of your time. So keeping a garden in good order may be very difficult if you work long hours. One final thing is the general feel of the place. Does it have a good atmosphere? And most importantly of all, would you feel comfortable living there?
Thank you, Edward. But I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. But I'll be back next Wednesday when my guest speaker will be talking about buying a computer. So until then, bye for now.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a lecture about geotourism. You have 30 seconds to look at questions 31 to 34.
Now, I'd like to move on to talk about something called geotourism. Geotourism is very basically leveraging the benefits of tourism for local communities. I would just like to give you a couple of statistics which are very illustrative of the current situation with regard to young travellers and international tourism. Firstly, tourism has an impact on more people worldwide than any other industry. Indeed, it has an impact on 1 in every 2 people, either directly or indirectly. The second statistic is that in global tourism, there is a 97% economic leakage. This means that if you spend £100 on going on holiday, normally only £3 of that money will actually reach the people who are giving you the services and the accommodation, for example, in the destination. If you put these two figures together, you can understand why some of the regions of the world which have very high levels of tourism still have very high levels of poverty and huge developmental challenges. These countries have this massive industry demanding a huge number of services, but they are not seeing a fair reward for these services. Geotourism is about changing this.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 35 to 40.
Projects are now being developed with financial organisations such as the World Bank. One of these involves developing a technology platform which is bringing grassroots travel products such as hotels, locally owned hotels, not global chains, very locally owned tour operators to the international travel market, therefore avoiding the middlemen. These middlemen often cut them out of the market completely or just make their business unsustainable. Another way that geotourism can be promoted is through the niche travel market of volunteering. These days, a significant number of older teenagers want to spend a gap year, either between school and university or university and employment. Often, these people want to spend some or all of their year volunteering, but they either don't have the money or don't feel inclined to pay the main volunteering organisation businesses the fee they require, which can be as high as £3,500. What they are looking for is an organisation who can connect them with people on the ground, who can suggest worthwhile local projects. So, this is a real win-win scenario. The organisers charge a small flat fee, which then goes to the local contact. Thus, the local contact gets a very good commission just for one customer. The customer is also saving a large amount of money and time, both of which they can give to the projects they end up working on. There is still quite a long way to go before poverty in the most popular of tourist areas is eradicated, but a focus on this type of geotourism could provide an answer.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Hello everyone, welcome to Team Art Stream. I'm RP and you are watching the Ielts Listening Test channel. I'm super excited to announce that on your demand we have started a series of writing tasks too. And if your dream is 7 plus, this video is for you. So this is statement. Some people think everyone should be vegetarian. Should be vegetarian, not a. Because we don't need to eat meat to have a healthy diet. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So this is introduction. Health of people depends on the type of things they eat. Mostly people prefer to add meat in their meal, but I always prefer vegetarian food due to emptying of reasons. Emptying means many reasons. There are myriad of reasons for eating vegetarian food. Myriad means many reasons. Firstly, vegetarian food includes green vegetable, beans, fruit, cheese, curd and milk, which are energy booster. They also contain fat such as carbohydrates, vitamin, minerals and so on, which are very essential for proper growth. Furthermore, animals are also a creation of God, like human beings. They have emotions and feel pain like us. But human beings hunt them for their greedy purpose or for temptation of taste and disrupt their life. Moreover, vegetarian foods are cheapest food and everyone can afford it. Research has shown that vegetarian food may also reduce the risk of metabolic syndrome, which include obesity, heart problems and so on. Last but not least, If people try to stop non-vegetarian food, we can preserve the animal from the cruelty they can live freely. On the other hand, some people such as players and bodybuilders are suggested to intake some special food or supplement to fulfill the requirement of their bodies. For example, Geeta Fogart, a favorite wrestler from Haryana, did not eat meat before her coach suggested her to maintain her body. Hence, for a specific requirement, eating meat is not a bad idea. This is how I have written conclusion. Before putting my pen down, I would like to state that due to lips making means tasty food, people should not hunt animal because vegetarian food contain energy which is enough for our good health. So this is the end of the video, but don't forget to subscribe our channel, like, please comment and press the bell icon so that you can get notification of every new video. Bye bye for now. See you in my next video.